I have to introduce myself. I'm Sergei Popov. I was born in Moscow and studied in Moscow State University. I studied mathematics, and then I went to Brazil for a postdoc, and then I just stayed there. And well, I'm a research mathematician working in probability theory, like stochastic processes, Markov chains, and this kind of stuff. And some 5 years ago, I kind of stumbled upon an article about Bitcoin in some internet site, and I read it and thought, okay, I will become rich. That's great. Then I started to read about it and discovered, well, that at that time it was not so easy to mine it already. But well, there were a lot of altcoins at that time. I started researching about them, and there was one called NXT. By the way, in 2 days there will be 5-year anniversary of NXT. And it was one of the first proof of stake coins, which was kind of novel concept at that time. And it was created by Serguei. Well, so I started to read about it, started to talk with people on the forum, on this bitcointalk.org, and then on the NXT forum. And then at some point I did some calculations, probabilistic calculations, because the blockchains have a lot to do with the so-called Poisson process, which is a stochastic process. Well, I will not give details, but it's not difficult. So I do know some things about Poisson process because it's my specialty. So I did some calculations and posted them on the forum, and people said, wow, that looks great. Impossible to understand, but still looks great. Please write more. And well, it was that way that I kind of became known in the NXT community as the mathematician of the community. And when Sergei Ivancheglo and David Zonsteber, who was also a member of NXT community, as well as Dominic Schiner also. So when they decided that it was time to start a new project, they invited me to be a mathematician of the project. Well, and that was the story, more or less. So I didn't really start it, but okay, I was invited by these two guys, Sergei Ivancheglo and David Zonsteber. And well, we started to think about how to make a crypto system which is suitable for Internet of Things. So, the idea is that in the Internet of Things, you have a lot of microtransactions, which are transactions of very, very small value, like a couple of satoshis, or even zero value transactions. And of course, when you have a lot of such transactions, the idea of having transaction fees is not very attractive, because if the fee is $1, and you want to buy a helicopter, it's okay. But if the fee is $1 and you want to buy a cup of coffee, it's already not so nice. And if the fee for each transaction is $1 and you need to issue 1,000 of zero-value transactions, that becomes definitely not attractive. Well, so we started to think about how do we make a system without transaction fees altogether. Well, to make a crypto system without transaction fees, you have to get rid of miners, because miners are someone who have some resource that others don't have, like hashing power or stake or whatever, proof of something. If there is proof of something, then the miners must have this something. Now, if you have something, this means that you invested something to have this, another something. And so, if you invested, you want to have profit on this. So you will want to charge fees for your services. Well, this means that you have to eliminate miners from the system, so that the system will be purely collaborative, based on the principle, I help you and you help me. I help the others and the others will help you. Now this has some implications. First of all, there will be no blocks in the sense of Bitcoin. In the sense of block is something which contains, say, 1,000 of transactions, because who will form these blocks? So now, you can still call these blocks, but in IOTA, these are more or less individual transactions. Just if you want to issue transactions, you just issue it and put it to the ledger. So as you see, this is not exactly a blockchain. It's a generalization called directed acyclic graph. If you so the picture is not very good, but there are very small pointers here, very small arrows, which means can you? Do you want me to put the first one you sent me? No, it's okay. Yeah, this is fine. Actually, please leave it here. So this is how it goes. When a new transaction D enters the system, it has to approve two other transactions. So in this case, C and B. And approve means that you kind of vet these transactions for validity, for consistency. You kind of vet the whole past for consistency. And this way you help the system. Because if you approved this transaction B, for instance, this means that you said, okay, this is fine. This looks to be a good transaction which doesn't contradict to nothing. And this way, how it goes. So you have this kind of chain, which not chain. So we say sometimes that IOTA is a blockchain without blocks and without chain. Yeah? Okay, now what are the problems with the systems of such kind? the main problem is called freelance, people who do not want to collaborate with the system, but want to use the system. That's have to do with the tragedy of the commons, if I remember correctly. Anyway, now, what would be my behavior? Can you put a little bit further? No, maybe big. Okay, lazy tips. There was a very nice picture of Bart here. Very nice picture of Bart's. Is it Bart or? Okay. Never mind. But this guy is apparently lazy. Now, no, the next, sorry, the previous, oh, no. Can you put the previous one? Next. Oh, yeah, what, previous, yes. So here it's lazy, okay. You see, suppose you don't want to work a lot. What would be your strategy? You would just approve a couple of some very old transactions, like here. So this approves this transaction B and some even older transaction which is there next to Satoshi. You know, it's the kind of behavior that we would like to avoid. Because if nobody approves recent transactions, then the system will not go forward. Is it clear? Well, to avoid this, we invented an algorithm. Let's go a bit further. Okay. So peso cumulativo means cumulative weight. But you understand, but basically it equals to the. So this picture is a little bit wrong, but anyhow, each transaction has some weight assigned to it, which is basically the number of all transactions which approve this one directly, like this, or indirectly, like this, plus one. So, okay, let's go a bit forward because this picture is wrong. And the idea to avoid this behavior, that lazy behavior, is that we would do a random walk on the tangle towards the tips, and the transition probabilities of this random walk are organized in such a way that, for instance, from here, it's very unlikely that you go here. It's much more likely that you go here, because the weight of this transaction is much bigger than the weight of this transaction. So that's basically it. If you know that by default everybody uses this kind of tip selection algorithm, it's not good for you to have this lazy behavior, because nobody would select your transaction. I mean, you are free to do all kinds of stupid things in the tangle. We used to say that the IOTA is about freedom. You are free to issue bad transactions. You can approve very, very old transactions if you want. You can construct your own subtangle if you want. But in principle, this kind of behavior will not be punished, but I mean, it will be punished in the sense of others will not collaborate with you. So it's kind of not worth to do it. Oh, so that's basically it. You have this tip selecting random walk. Okay, can you go a bit further? Okay. Let me maybe speak about core decide. Yeah. Because it was this week that we released this 4 blog post series about how do we remove the coordinator from the network. Well, so there are several ideas there. One of the most controversial is called stars, if you remember what is it. So, what is it? As I said, IOTA is about freedom, which means that the tip selection algorithm is only recommended, but it is not enforced. You know, nobody would verify that you used a recommended tip selection algorithm, well, because it's impossible to verify. Yeah. The only rule that we have is that any new transaction must approve 2 old transactions, and that's all. Now, imagine that I know that some transactions were made by Carpincho. Well, Carpincho is my friend. I trust Carpincho. So, in my opinion, these transactions should be nice, right? Then it's maybe a good idea for me to give a larger weight to these transactions, isn't it? I'm free to do it. Nobody can forbid me to do it. So I will do it. And that's the idea. So now we have these milestones from IOTA Foundation, which kind of dictate which transactions are valid or not. Basically now the rule is if a transaction is referenced by a milestone, it is confirmed. If not, it's not confirmed. And that's all. Now these stars are not really milestones. It's kind of soft milestones. So imagine that there is an entity which is trusted, I don't know, which is considered important by the others, like IOTA Foundation, or I don't know, Microsoft. Is Microsoft trusted? What do you think? Now, anyway, use your own as example. Now, if you can somehow identify that some transactions were issued by this entity whom you trust, isn't it a bad idea for you to give them a bigger weight? What do you think? It sounds like not a bad idea. After all, it's in your interest to be in a good part of the story. I mean, how do I say? You want to be in the same tango where IOTA Foundation is, where the exchanges are, where XDK to MAM is, right? Where other important players are. Let me call it proof of real-world importance. Why not? So, this is just one of the ideas how you get rid of the coordinator. You just voluntarily give more weight to transactions from reputable entities. It's up to you. You can do it, you can not do it, but it's up to you. You are free to do it. Sometimes we say that complete decentralization and freedom don't come together. For example, I know there is a very good wine out there, Malbec, I guess, right? And I will happily drink this wine with you and in particular Carpincho, because, well, I like you, I trust you, I will drink wine with you. Now, complete decentralization would be something like, okay, here is your wine, now you go there, you choose one person out there at random, and you drink wine with that person. It doesn't sound good to me, you know. So, I'm free to choose. That's a principle. Okay, I think maybe at this point I just say, okay, you can now ask me any questions, you can ask me anything, I will answer something.
So, thank you, by the way, big fan. Will IOTA, without a coordinator, then have some sort of convergence towards being, and not IOTA, not technically IOTA, but people that, say, nodes that get to choose who are the most trustworthy transactions, to be able to monetize on that in a way where you know, to become more important, you can pay membership. And I'm talking because I don't fully understand the concept here, but is this what's going on? Eventually, there will be some sort of way system to make me a more attractive transaction?
Well, in principle, you are free to pay something to others if you want to. But as far as I know, importance is something that you earn in the real world. It's not something that you just buy. It's complex. Well, you know, I'm just a mathematician. It's a real life question.
Just, I'm sorry to follow up. Maybe I don't understand how, if I'm just a random user that's traveling worldwide and I want to make a transaction, will I be important in that moment, or will I have to work for my importance to be able to have this wallet that allows me to have these transactions?
No, you can issue your transactions your transaction normally, but to issue your transaction, you must choose where do you attach it in the tangle. And you would want to attach it in a good place, right? And to choose this good place, you perform this random walk in the tangle, giving somehow more weight to the transactions you consider more trustful, more important, more IOTA-ish. Okay?
All right, thank you.
Hi, Sergei.
Yeah.
Well, perhaps it's a newbie or silly question. Sorry if that's the case. But as you know, in many systems for cryptocurrencies, certain numbers were randomly selected, or that's what at least their founders say. Why, if there is some kind of explanation, why have you selected two confirmations? I mean, one, of course, maybe it's not enough, just common sense, but why not 3 confirmations? Is there some mathematical reason, or just was selected randomly the number 2 for confirmations?
Well, as you say, 1 is not enough, just because with 1 confirmation you do not reduce the number of tips, the number of the leaves of this graph. Now, after 1, there goes 2, so 2 is already fine. But the reason also is that if you approve 3 transactions instead of 2, you also have to work more. You have to verify the past cone of these. Well, you have to run 3 random walks instead of 2. So it's more difficult to approve 3 transactions instead of 2. As far as I remember, there were some simulations.
Heuristical simulations, maybe, that showed that 2 was the balance.
Yeah, I don't really remember if they were conclusive, but they at least showed that between approving 2 transactions and approving 3 transactions, it appears that approving 2 transactions is slightly better. Yeah, but I have to confess that I don't remember in what sense. Still,
okay. Thank you.
So I want to ask, you mentioned this strategy of avoiding the coordinator based on the of these entities, trusted entities. Is this the main, or you seriously considering other alternatives here?
Other
Alternatives of the strategy.
No, it's only one. It's only one thing that which we are considering. There are others. In fact, all these strategies, it's not our strategies. We just propose things, and you follow them or don't. If what we propose is reasonable, then you will probably follow it. If what we propose is stupid, then, well, you won't. For example, wow. Great. For example, suppose that you are observing some state of the tangle, and suddenly, out of nowhere, for example, here, there appears a very, very big chunk of transactions, which contains some transactions contradicting to this place, for instance, but there are really a lot of them. So normally, your random walk would maybe come here, okay? But isn't it suspicious if something appears here out of nowhere What do you think? Well, for me, it's suspicious. Are you obliged to reference this stuff which appears here? No. So why should you? You may kind of penalize this stuff which is suspicious from your point of view. So this is another idea which we call local modifiers. Why we call it so? Because, well, normally in all these cryptocurrency systems, there is a rule that the same ledger is interpreted the same way. Well, it's not a bad idea, but depends. For tip selection, for instance, why should you? No, there is no reason. You just avoid, you just try to behave reasonably. If there is something suspicious, you don't approve it. So, there is another idea, for instance, which we call accountability of the nodes, which means more or less the following. So imagine that you all are nodes in the of the network. So you have some sort of identifier, which is in our case is just name and family name and maybe passport number, but in the case of computer network, it's, well, something. And when you issue a transaction, you put together some statement, cryptographically signed, which says, hey, it's my transaction, I issued it. And then you propagate it, and the others just propagate it further together with this statement, so that every other node would know that this transaction was issued by Carpenter, for instance. Okay, now if you see two transactions which are clearly contradicting, one is let's transfer everything from address A to address B, and the other one is let's transfer everything from address A to address C. Okay? So, well, these two transactions are cryptographically signed, and it's clear that the entity who issued them tried to do something bad, tried to double spend. This is bad, yeah? But now you know from which nodes these transactions originated. And you say, guys, what are you doing? Is it good? What are you doing? Probably not. Maybe you should consider your behavior. Maybe I will not propagate your transactions with so much enthusiasm as I do with the transactions of the others, right? Isn't it reasonable? Yeah. If I'm a good node, it's in my interest to behave in such a way that the network works well, right? So if I see someone who is behaving badly, well, I will censor him. I will do something to not have friendship with this person. You know, for instance, if your neighbor starts behaving badly towards you, you will just cut your relations with this person and say, okay, you live your life, I live mine, just go. Okay? So this is another idea which will hopefully work, right? And if I'm not mistaken, there are some others. There is one which we called Hatfield solution. Yeah. You know who is Hatfield? It's Metallica frontman, right? Yeah. I remember I've seen a picture of him wearing this T-shirt. It was written, "Keep calm and kill them all." So the first album of Metallica is called "Kill Them All." So again, it's the tango. I don't know. Maybe someone is having fun because it's free. Yeah. You can do this. I don't know. Yeah. Maybe he's just constructing something beautiful. Yeah. Okay, so going back to keep calm and kill them all. If you see two transactions like A to B and A to C, which are clearly contradicting and malicious, what do? If I were you, I would not approve none of this. Let them just die. Kill them. So this way, if someone tries to double spend, the network will just punish him for that. Isn't it a bad idea? I think it's a good idea. And since IOTA is free, what is good idea, what is reasonable? It will be the course of action, you know. So we assume that the nodes will do tip selection in such a way that it's reasonable. So that's basically is. We are in this questions part, by the way. So are there any other questions?
I want to ask about IOTA price.
I don't hear. Is it on?
Hola, hola. Are you upset about IOTA price right now?
What's IOTA price right now?
About 30 cents.
Well, it's
What do you think?
what I think about it. I think I'm not allowed to swear, and but what can we do? It's a market, yeah. Well, if this market just dies, I guess we would be affected. But still, the IOTA Foundation have quite some money. I mean, real euros. So it can work for quite some time, even if the price of the token will collapse. I don't believe it will collapse because we are doing something great, in my opinion. Yeah. But still, nobody controls the market. The market is unpredictable. But let's, I mean, we just do our work and let it be what it should be.